All right, we've come to the last part of the creed that we'll be studying today. And this is what we're going to call the four last things. Now, the line in the Apostles' Creed is very short. It's looking for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come, or in the Nicene Creed. But what I want to do is take just a moment today and talk about the four last things. This is very important, not only because it involves our eternal destiny, but because there's a lot of confusion on this today. So the four last things are death, judgment, heaven, and hell. The reason purgatory is not one of the last things is because it is not last. In other words, we're going to die, we're going to be judged, and we're going to eventually end up in heaven or hell. Those of us who need the purification go through purgatory before we get to heaven, but it's not a last thing, it's on our way to heaven. So, all right, so the first two are relatively simple. The first one is death. Death is the separation of the body and soul. It's a consequence of the sin of Adam. It's been conquered by Christ, and it is certainly not something that Christians should fear. There's a lot of fear of death, which is very unchristian in our world, especially among Christians. So death is going to come to all of us. It's going to happen, and we need to accept that fact and be ready for it, because when we die, we are going to be judged. And while the image of Christ seated on a throne and proclaiming our fate is not a bad image, those of us who don't know better may be confused by that, as if it's Christ's opinion. See, the thing with Christ is, unlike us, is his judgments are not simply a matter of opinion. When he says something, it's because it's the way it is. So, in other words, if at our judgment we go to heaven or hell, it's not because facts are presented and he has to sift through them. He knows everything. What he's simply proclaiming is, this is what the state of your soul is. And then you are going to accept that, because at that point there will be no lies, no self-delusion, no confusion. You are going to say, yep, that's exactly what I deserve. And then you're going to go there. And you're going to go there of your own free will. Now, what about purgatory, and what determines this? Well, again, it's the state of your soul. And this is something which we see in the writings of the saints. It's not explicitly taught by the church, but I'm sharing it as an image. Again, the state of your soul. What is your condition when you die? And if you look at things from the perspective of a relationship, it makes complete sense. The state of your relationship with God when you die is the state you are going to spend eternity in. What we understand is that there is no changing after death. We have all of our choices to make in life, but once we have made those choices, whatever the state of that relationship is in death is what it's going to be for eternity. So, if we die outside of the love of God, now we might delude ourselves into thinking that we love God, but if we truly have made a choice to separate ourselves from God, to, if you want to use a dating term, break up with him, when you die in that state, that is your state for eternity. And because of how extreme that is, when we're confronted with the love of God, the love who is God, and our souls, which are outside of that love, are confronted with that, it is going to be excruciating pain, and we are going to run as far away from that as possible. And God creates a place for us to go to get away from that love, which is hell. For those who are in God's love, in a state of grace, that is going to be joy, and in other words, that's going to be heaven. For those who are in God's love, but imperfectly, that has to be purified. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be very uncomfortable, but it's going to be bearable because we have the love of God in us. And as these imperfections are burnt away, as the relationship is purified, it becomes easier to the point where we enjoy that relationship. Now, this is not, again, an exact dogmatic teaching, but it is a way to understand what happens. It's not that God makes a decision. We have made the decision, and we are confronted with the love of God, and our decision then is weighed, it's valued, it's judged according to the love of God that we're confronting, and how we respond then to it. So it's very, very important. God does not condemn anyone to hell. We all condemn ourselves to hell when we choose to sin against him in a serious way. And again, just look at it in the sense of a human relationship. If you offend a loved one and you die in that state, that relationship is not going to be mended. It's not because the party who's offended is not forgiving. It's because you have never asked for forgiveness. And again, at death, the ability to do so ends. So again, look at it from the point of a human relationship, but the most important thing is that we're all going to die, and that our eternal destiny depends on what our state is when we die, which is why we always need to live our lives as if today was our last day, not in the sense of debauchery and eating and drinking and being merry, but knowing that at any moment we may meet the Lord.